You don't remember the moment it began. There was no dramatic scene, no single memory you can point to and say, that's where everything changed. It happened quietly, in the background of your childhood, in the way you learned to read the room before you spoke, in how your nervous system learned tension faster than joy. And now, years later, you live inside a life that looks functional from the outside, but feels strangely disconnected on the inside. You make choices, you build relationships, you chase goals, yet something always feels off, as if your life is happening around you rather than through you. This is the mind secret that shapes your entire life. Not your intelligence, not your discipline, not your motivation, but the unconscious survival strategy your mind adopted before you ever had language for it. A strategy so old, so deeply wired, that you mistake it for your personality. What once protected you now quietly decides how much love you allow, how visible you feel permitted to be, and how small you must stay to belong. This is not a story about weakness. It's a story about adaptation and about the invisible cost of surviving too well. Psychology tells us that the most powerful patterns are rarely formed through obvious trauma. They're shaped through repetition, through subtlety, through emotional absence. Imagine a child growing up in an environment where emotions aren't dangerous enough to punish, but not important enough to hold. No one teaches the child how to name what they feel. No one mirrors their inner world back to them. Their sadness is tolerated, not understood. Their joy is noticed, but not protected. This is emotional neglect, not the absence of love, but the absence of attunement. And when a child's inner experience isn't met, the nervous system draws a conclusion that lasts a lifetime. Connection requires self-suppression. From that moment on, the child adapts. They minimize their needs. They regulate themselves too early. They become emotionally efficient. They don't become weak. They become observant, careful, hypervigilant. Hypervigilance isn't just anxiety. It's a nervous system trained to scan for danger in human connection. Tone, shifts, micro-expressions, silence, distance. You don't relax into relationships. You monitor them. At the same time, attachment patterns begin to form. Some learn that closeness threatens safety and they pull away. Others learn that love must be maintained through effort and they overextend. Different strategies, same belief. Being fully yourself risks losing connection. So identity becomes conditional. Instead of forming around authenticity, it forms around what works. Neuroscience shows that these patterns embed themselves into the brain's default mode network, the system responsible for how you think about yourself. Your inner voice becomes a manager, constantly asking, how should I be right now? Which version of me is safest? What response will keep everything stable? And slowly, without realizing it, you stop asking who you actually are. The cost of this adaptation is quiet. There's no breakdown, no dramatic collapse, just a low-level grief you can't explain, the grief of the unlived self. You trade authenticity for acceptance before you even know a trade has been made. Truth for stability, desire for permission, expression for belonging. Because this sacrifice happens early, it doesn't feel like loss. It feels like normal. Carl Jung spoke of the burden of carrying the unlived life of one's parents, but there's another burden that often goes unnamed, the unlived life of yourself. You feel it as dissatisfaction without a clear cause, as relationships that feel close yet oddly distant, as success that never fully lands in your body. You fear judgment, not because you're fragile, but because your nervous system associates visibility with danger. You fear abandonment, not because people leave, but because you learned early that being yourself risks disconnection. Rest feels unsafe. Joy feels suspicious. Stillness feels like exposure. As an adult, this pattern no longer lives in memory. It lives in behavior. In relationships, you overgive, over-explain, or emotionally disappear. You anticipate everyone else's needs with precision, but struggle to name your own without guilt. In your work, you choose competence over fulfillment, safety over aliveness, what makes sense over what feels true. Your self-worth becomes tied to usefulness. Rest must be earned. Existing is never quite enough. Boundaries feel dangerous because saying no feels like risking connection. Emotionally, you analyze instead of inhabit. You understand your pain, but you don't feel it. When someone asks what you want, you hesitate, not because you don't care, but because you learn to ask a different question. What should I want? None of this means something is wrong with you. These are coping mechanisms, intelligent adaptations, formed by a child who learned that flexibility meant survival. And this is where awareness changes everything. When the pattern becomes conscious, it loses its power. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what happened to me that made this necessary. Healing doesn't mean erasing the strategy. It means thanking it and gently removing it from the driver's seat. Inner child work reconnects you with the part of you that learned to disappear. Shadow work helps you reclaim the traits you buried to stay acceptable. Nervous system regulation teaches your body something new, that safety and expression can coexist. This isn't about becoming louder or tougher or someone else entirely. It's about becoming congruent, choosing presence over performance, softness over survival, truth over tolerance. And one day, quietly, almost imperceptibly, something shifts. You realize you don't need to earn your place in the world. You already belong. And the mind secret that once shaped your entire life becomes the wisdom that finally sets you free. Because the goal was never to be fixed. It was always to become whole.